Hey there, it's Maggie again, and I am here to do the first of a small series of videos that I'm going to do aimed at new nurses or newer nurses who are struggling. And the first one today, like I had introduced last week, is to focus on time management and some time management skills that can kind of make or break your shift. The biggest thing that I think any new nurse needs to learn, be it besides assessment skills, but you really need to know how to own your day and to run your day, so that way you're not constantly drowning, constantly playing catch up, and all of those things that can be really tiresome and can burn people out. It's those extraneous things that burn people out. So I have a few tips that have worked really well for me, and I'd like to share them now. So the first thing, and nobody likes this one, but when you are new and you're learning things, you need to start your day early. Whether you're on day shift, whether you're on night shift. I mean, I used to show up at 6:15. And yes, I know it is early, and yes, I know report doesn't start till 7:45, or, my most recent position, it didn't start until 7. So, I mean, I would have started at 6:30 when I was newer. But the fact of the matter is, you are still responsible for knowing as much about your patients as humanly possible. And by starting early, you come into report with a better understanding of what you're looking at, so it can make your report more efficient. And you can also come in to your day not feeling like you need to get report and then play catch up in the chart. You already have a pretty good idea. So you come in, you pull it depends. And the hard part is depending on the unit you work in, you may not have your assignment. The only way this really works is if you have your assignment. Because most recently, when I worked at University of Michigan, we didn't get our assignments until after we did a brief report on everybody. Then we chose our assignment and went out and got bedside reports. So that makes it a little harder because everybody starts from the same starting line. So, but up until that point, I mean, I went a good 7 years where, you came in and you had an assignment already done. And so if that's the type of unit you work within, starting early is one of the best ways you can get ahead and start timing your day. As you get more confident in your practice and you get more efficient at looking at your charts, you don't need to show up nearly as early. I show up 5 minutes before report starts, and I don't feel the least bit unprepared when I go to take care of my patient, but that's because I've had a lot of practice doing that. The second tip I have is your first assessment when you roll into that door in the morning, is you need to set a time limit for each of your assessments. When I was in nursing school the first time around, we had gone through and you had to do like the 60-minute assessment or 60-second assessment, not 60 minutes. That would be obscene. But in that, while 60 seconds is a stretch in some cases, particularly when you're new, I think it's a little too fast. I've seen a lot of newer nurses, because you don't have the confidence in your assessment skills yet, they take a really long time. And what I do throughout my shift, I mean, this is not the only time you'll assess your patient. This is where you go in, you get a baseline, you see, you check their neuro status, you go through, you give them the listen, you see what you're dealing with, you get a set of vitals. There is no reason that once you're really efficient with that, you can't have that done in less than 5 minutes, and have a pretty good idea of where you need to go the rest of your morning. Because when I started, I may have ended in I did most of my career in critical care, but when I started, I was in an LTAC, which is a long-term acute care facility, where I had 5 to 7 patients every night. And this was a brand new nurse, and this is the one thing that it really taught me how to knock out an assessment and how to knock out my time management skills. Because otherwise I would have drowned and nothing would have gotten done. That's 5 to 7 assessments. That's 5 to 7 sets of meds. It's 5 to 7 dressing changes. It depended on the patient load every night, but some of those patients are ventilated, so the biggest thing is you need to set yourself a time limit for that initial assessment. That's reasonable for you, and that time limit will get smaller and smaller, as you get more experienced. And I still work within my own time limits. And it is the very first thing that I do. I get done getting a report, I don't go sit at a computer because I've already been at the computer. I know my labs. I know these things. And then I get up and I walk straight into my rooms and I start knocking out my assessments. It's especially helpful. You have a little more flexibility in critical care usually just because the patient loads, while they're more critical and more time consuming overall, I think, they don't tend to, you don't have to necessarily run into the room. Like if you're in progressive care, I mean, you're taking between 2 and 4 patients, depending on your staffing levels, and sometimes 5. When you're in progressive care, you've got to rock out your assessments and get moving because you are going to be chasing your tail all day if you don't do that. Because like the biggest thing I did, like I went in, I did all my assessments, and then I pulled my med lists, and I went through and I checked them against what was appropriate for each patient, and then I pulled my meds. I'd walk in, first patient meds, done. Second patient meds, done. And go through and just have to, go ahead and get them given, come back and get the next ones and move on. And then as soon as I was done with that, you have to organize your time based on what you get in reports. So your routine will look a little different every day, but it should look similar. So that is my next tip, is to create a routine and stick to it. What worked for me may not work for you. Like I said, I came in early. I got read through my chart. I knew my labs. I knew most of my meds by the time I was getting report in those situations where I had my assignment ahead of time. So that enabled me to get up and just knock out my assessments, knock out my meds. And so at that point, I was free to do the other tasks that necessarily needed to be done. Actually maybe go in and listen to my patient a little more, get them out of bed, dressing changes, all of those other fun things that we do as nurses that are necessities, but they're also the things that can hold us up, because if we don't give our meds and we don't do our assessments, we can't do our charting. And as we all know, EMRs are the bane of our existence a lot of times, but it takes a lot of time to chart a good assessment. And if you prioritize those things, the biggest piece of advice I ever got in nursing school was, do not treat the monitor, treat the patient. Because, and if you've ever had the pleasure of seeing PEA, the monitor isn't always telling the truth. So the biggest thing is go in, put eyeballs on your patient. Make sure that they're okay. See what they look like. Because just because they have a heart rate of 95 and a blood pressure of, 100/50 and, an O2 sat of 97 doesn't mean they're doing great. It could, so it's really important that you put an eyeball on your patients right away. And then the rest can kind of go from there. So the next tip is going to probably feel like a little bit of gray area, and it's to build some flexibility into your routine. So for instance, when I was on a progressive unit, we got 4 patients generally, and, report went from 6:45 to 7:15. If you were really lucky, you were basically taking somebody's whole assignment, and so a report could be done pretty quickly. But even if it took the full half an hour to do that report, at 7:15, I'm rolling into my room. So I'm giving myself 2 to 3 minutes in assessment, but then I'm also building in a little bit of extra time, because what if you walk into a room and that patient isn't doing well, or they need to get up and use the restroom and stuff like that. So it's really important that you're very prudent with your time. So I would generally give myself 10 minutes a room. And if my assessment and all that was done in 3 minutes, sweet. That means I could go chart my vitals, I could chart my lines, I could chart the quick things that you can get out of the way before you have to sit down and chart an entire assessment. The biggest piece of advice I can offer is be prudent with your time and don't give it away to gossip or any of that stuff, because that is going to put you behind, and then you're not going to feel in control of your day, and you're not going to look in control of your day. So that is important. And then, your next one, the last big tip I have is you have to commit to your routine. And that's where the talking and the gossip and all that comes in, because we want to feel part of the team. And how we begin to feel part of a team is by interacting with each other and having conversations and doing those things that build relationships. And there are ways to do that when you're caught up and when you have a little bit of free time and so on and so forth. And I really do recommend that that's where you start with it, because ultimately you are responsible for your shift, and nobody wants to come to work on a regular basis feeling like they're out of control or that they can't manage their day. And managing your time is a really key piece to managing your day, because when you have all of these other things done, if something goes awry, as it often does, somebody codes, somebody just takes a turn, that eats up your whole day. I mean, even yesterday, my last day at the bedside, I had 2 patients, and I had luckily my one patient was solid for the moment because my other patient took a turn for the worse, and it occupied a good majority of my morning. Now, luckily, because I still have this really strict habit of managing my time, and I have a very strict routine when I'm at work, I was able to manage it all, and it wasn't, it didn't put me too far behind on my other patient, and so on and so forth. But I really think, particularly when you're new, finding a routine that works for you and sticking to it is probably the biggest thing you can do to improve your practice and improve your transition into practice. The rest will come, when you get good at doing a good, thorough, quick assessment. That will come, but that only comes from practice. And if you're struggling getting your assessment, in 3 to 5 minutes, where you feel like you've really gotten a good, you've looked at all their skin, you've listened to them front and back, you've checked all of your other assessments, practice on people at home. Most people are pretty good sports about it. It's embarrassing and it's weird, and I had to do an assessment on my husband to practice my advanced assessment techniques for grad school. And it kind of put me in a weird spot. So I understand the squeamishness to do that. But whatever it takes for you to get ahead of your day will really help with improving your confidence in your practice. And that is what we want. We want confident nurses who are not just competent. We want confident nurses, because when you work your way into a level of both competence and confidence, our patients benefit. I hope you found this helpful. I will be following this up with a few more areas and gaps that have been identified to me and that I have also noticed very recently in practice. So I hope you watch, and I look forward to speaking with you. Take care.